For multiple reasons, Jahan Dotson is a much bigger asset to the Philadelphia Eagles than I think people are giving him credit for. I'll tell you why coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. What's going on, Eagles fans? I'm your host, Louis DiBiase. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets right now. The Philadelphia Eagles had their first joint practice today with the Cleveland Browns. We'll get into a recap of that practice later on in the show. Malcolm Jenkins getting inducted into the Eagles Hall of Fame. Jam-packed episode for you, but I wanted to talk about Jahan Dotson first to start off today's episode because I don't think we're giving him enough credit for the asset that he can be to the Eagles in 2025. And I've said on the show multiple times this offseason how excited I am about Dotson in year two with this football team, finally a full offseason under his belt to grow and continue to grow the chemistry that he was building on with Jalen Hurts, especially down the stretch last year in the postseason. This is a former first-round pick that I think if the Eagles throw more this year, spread the ball around, trying to keep their guys healthy, I think Dotson could have, again, a much bigger role in the offense this year. But at the same time, I still don't think I think we're still understating like who he could be for this football team. Now, I'm not saying he's going to catch, 50 plus balls and have, 700 to 1,000 yards this year. I don't think he's going to replicate the production of a Devontae Smith or an A.J. Brown, but I do think he's going to be a much bigger, more valuable asset to this football team than he was in 2024. And look, I have a special place in my heart for even the small things that Dotson did last year in 2024. I think people know, if you've listened to my show since 2020, when they drafted Quz Watkins, you knew how big of a fan I was of Quz and how disappointed I was that he really couldn't be that, I make the analogy all the time, that corner three-point sharpshooter off the edge. When his number is called, you need him to hit just a couple big shots a game, right? Especially as that nice home run hitter, that niche like speedster to complement A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Like, he wasn't able to become that guy. And it really hurt them in Super Bowl 57 when his number was called down the field and he had a one-on-one shot and Jalen Hurts put the ball right in his hands. Quz Watkins dropped the football. Dotson last year, his number is like, if you didn't watch the Eagles, and week after week, he was pretty much a non-factor in 2024. But when Dotson's number was called in the Super Bowl, in the playoffs, in the regular season, unlike Quz Watkins, Dotson answered the call. If he just had a couple shots a game, for an NBA analogy, if LeBron James passed him the ball in the corner twice a game, Jahan Dotson hit those two corner three-point shots. Like, he made those two explosive plays in the first half of Super Bowl 59, and it really helped set the tone on that first scoring drive. Quz Watkins could not do that in Super Bowl 57. Again, it set the tone in the game, whereas with Quz dropping that ball, it's not the play that made them lose the game, but if Quz brings that down, they have a much better chance of winning that Lombardi trophy in 2022. Dotson made those plays, so I personally have a big-time appreciation for what Dotson did last year, and he was such a trooper to rarely get your number called, like where there's multiple games in a row where you're just not getting a single target. Maybe there's one wide receiver bubble screen that goes your way for 2 yards. Like, that's what his reality was for the majority of last year. And again, this is a former top 20 first-round selection that in Washington was a top 2, top 3 option in that passing game for the first 2 years of his career. But he never let that get in his head last year. And again, when his number was called in the Jacksonville game, he made that ridiculous circus contested catch. The following week, a deep back shoulder catch that he made in Jerry World, the Green Bay wildcard round to open up the game. First drive, Dotson scores the first touchdown of the postseason, then doesn't get the ball again for 2 more weeks. His number is called again in the Super Bowl, and he answers it. Like, I believe he was a big-time asset last year. But this year, I think he's going to be a much bigger part of this football team. And he can be an asset in multiple ways to Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, and to Jalen Hurts. Number one, he's much more equipped to help with injuries this time around. He's much more equipped to be an actual consistent part of this offense. Now, again, I don't think suddenly his numbers are going to jump from, a little over 200 receiving yards last year. I don't think now he's going to have, 700 to 1,000 unless there's a serious injury to one of your top three guys, Goddard, Brown, or Smith. But I don't think he's going to have under 300 yards again. Like, I think he's going to be a much bigger part of the offense. And if there is an injury to Devontae Smith or to A.J. Brown or to Dallas Goedert, which feels like an inevitable reality year after year, unlike last year, Dotson can pick up the slack a whole lot more. They're not going to be as behind the eight ball as they were last year because when A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith got hurt last year, it was in the first half of the season. It was in September, the first 4 games. Dotson wasn't really ready to carry the load at that time because, just think about it, he was a late offseason trade. The Eagles acquired Dotson in August. He really only had a couple weeks before the season started to learn a brand new offense. And so he was still getting his feet wet, still getting his feet under him for, I would say, the first probably half of the year before he probably was really comfortable in Nick Sirianni and, Kellen Moore's offense. This time around, if Brown or Smith went down, like I said, Dotson's had a whole offseason to get ready in Kevin Patullo's offense. Dotson's had now a year and a half to grow chemistry with Jalen Hurts, and Jalen's been going to him pretty consistently this offseason, including today against Cleveland in the joint practices, that open practice Sunday night at the Link. He made some big-time plays in that preseason opener against Cincinnati. Down the stretch, like I said last year, the last game of the regular season, the playoffs, like Dotson was a good football player. So I just think this time around, he can do more. He can do more for you. And Patullo even said today in his press conference that Dotson's been able to play now in the slot on the outside. They've been moving him across the formation, whereas last year they weren't able to do that. Again, this isn't some random day 3 undrafted player that would have to jump up into a big role. He was a top 20 pick for a reason. Yeah, was he a 1,000-yard receiver in Washington? No, he had a little over 500 yards in both of those first 2 years with the Commanders, but he was a top 2, top 3 passing target in that offense. It was Terry McLaurin, and then it was 2A, 2B, Jahan Dotson, and Curtis Samuel in that passing attack. Like, he can do a lot more for you than he did last year. Is he going to have to week after week? No, but he's a bigger asset this year because injuries happen. A.J. Brown is out right now, and Dotson has picked up the slack as that number 2 receiver behind Devontae Smith. He's also a big-time asset to this football team because he could be, and I'm not saying they're going to want to trade him in a Super Bowl contending season in case there is injuries, and he is a valuable asset to this offense as a guy that, when his number is called, the quality is there. The efficiency is there, even if the volume isn't. But let's say before the trade deadline, Dotson looks good, but the safety position's a little bit shaky, or corner, or the edge rusher position, or let's say Tyler Steen has just been a little too inconsistent at the right guard spot, and Howie Roseman wants to find help elsewhere. Yeah, he's got a ton of draft picks to make a move, but what if a wide receiver needy team that's trying to make a playoff run that deals with an injury themselves, they see Jahan Dotson as a solid rental player on a 1-year deal. He's a free agent next year, and maybe there's room for an extension. There is that potential. I could see a team wanting Jahan Dotson and maybe even doing a player-for-player swap for the Eagles if there's a position of need. Like, could they use Dotson to go upgrade the safety or cornerback position or, defensive end, right guard? I could see that being a reality as well. And I wouldn't even mind potentially considering an extension in Philadelphia for Dotson if he's interested in that kind of role. Again, I think he could have more opportunities elsewhere and probably more money, but let's say he likes Philadelphia and, he likes winning and he gets more opportunities this year. I wouldn't mind the idea of an extension because when you think about it, Dallas Goedert's on a 1-year contract. If he has a big year this season and cashes in, it likely won't be in Philadelphia. The Eagles might want to keep Dotson to be that third target to replace Goddard. Maybe it's not a tight end. Maybe it is Jahan Dotson long-term. Maybe he's the Tyler Boyd, if you will, to the T. Higgins and Jamar Chase that are A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So because he can step up more this year on the field in case of injuries and just in general because of the potential of him being a trade asset and also a potential long-term extension target, Dotson is a valuable player to this football team, and he's having a really good offseason. He's one of the players that I've been the most excited for following along throughout OTA's training camp and now the preseason. Let me know what you think. Hit us up on X at LockedOnBirds, at DiBiase LOE. Dotson wasn't the only player that had a good day today in joint practices against the Cleveland Browns. We'll recap that practice coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports. Guys, August 26th is officially FanDuel Future Days, a brand new holiday for football fans, and I love futures. If you love to bold predict preseason hunches, this is your day. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is definitely your moment. Bet on Jalen Hurts to win MVP. Crown the Eagles as your champion, back-to-back champs. You can bet on that in August. Or parlay your division winner dark horses. For me, I'm looking at maybe the Jacksonville Jaguars in the AFC South. I think in the NFC West, I wouldn't be surprised if the Seattle Seahawks or the Arizona Cardinals contend. I'm taking the Falcons to win the NFC South. That's the team that I'm watching the closest as a dark horse winner of their division. You can bet on it all on the FanDuel app. Visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your future bets now because Future Days is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. The Eagles had their first joint practice of training camp today against the Cleveland Browns. They've got another one tomorrow. They take on the Browns in a preseason battle, week 2, Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. We will have a recap show for you. We'll have a live squad show for you too, so make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. So today, again, joint practice, Eagles versus Browns. Some good takeaways, some bad. I thought it was an up-and-down performance from Jalen Hurts through an early interception, but then heated up, especially in red zone drills, multiple touchdowns to Devontae Smith, and A.J. Dillon actually got involved in the passing attack. So, again, an up-and-down day. The cornerbacks, I don't think, had a really strong performance, but there were some great players, too. I thought Devontae Smith looked really good. He has been Jalen Hurts' go-to this offseason. And, of course, we know the passing game runs through A.J. Brown, and he's the Eagles' alpha, their true number 1. But whenever A.J. Brown is out of practice, like he has been over the last few because of his hamstring injury, it continues to confirm to me that Devontae Smith is one of the most underrated players in football. I've probably said it 1,000 times on this podcast. People rank him as one of the best wide receiver 2s in football. I think it's disrespectful to call him a wide receiver 2. The only reason he is considered that and has that label is because he's behind a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL. But I personally believe if he was in another offense where he got more targets, if he was the featured player, he too could be a top 5 receiver. He too would be a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. And every time A.J. Brown is out, it confirms to me that that is the reality. In the regular season last year, the games against Atlanta, New Orleans, Devontae was your go-to player and was able to carry the passing attack in what should have been 2 wins. In practice today, Devontae had multiple back-to-back touchdowns against Cleveland. You saw that amazing touchdown in the right corner of the end zone in the open practice. His route running, his body control, his hands, his explosive downfield ability, his contested catch ability. This is one of the most, he doesn't look like it, but this is one of the most complete wide receivers, not only in Eagles history, but in the NFL right now. And Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith, their chemistry, it makes sense he has more chemistry with Devontae over anybody. He played with him at Alabama. He has been with him his entire career as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Devontae has only known Jalen Hurts being his quarterback pretty much his entire collegiate and pro career. He had a year or two of Tua and Mac Jones, but it's mainly been Jalen Hurts. And you can see that chemistry, it continues to grow every single year. And as I said on a podcast last week, that is so crucial to the Eagles remaining a consistent contender. is the chemistry between Jalen Hurts and his weapons. Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert. Like, when you see dynasties become a thing, when you see teams battle for Super Bowls every year, there's at least one or two of these connections that a quarterback has with their weapons. And if you don't have that, like, it's not the thing that makes you a contender, but it's a very important part. Like, normally you don't win championships without this kind of dynamic. And Jalen has that with A.J. Brown. He's been with Dallas Goedert his whole career, but Devontae Smith too. And I think that's been the biggest connection of the offseason has been Jalen and Devontae. I think last year, because of injuries, Devontae's numbers don't look as great, but I thought last year was the best I've ever seen Devontae on film. I think a career year is coming for Smith in 2025. So that was a big takeaway. Another takeaway on the offense for the first team, I am still in complete awe of Jordan Mailata and the career that came to be. Like, I know he's been elite for years now, but it still completely blows my mind. Like, seeing people talk about him dominating the best defensive end in football and Myles Garrett today on run plays. Like, the fact that I ranked Jordan Mailata yesterday on the show as a top 2 player of importance outside of Jalen Hurts on this roster that you could least afford to lose. Looking back at in 2018, the fact that they drafted this guy in the 7th round, and my brain was like, oh, this is a fun pick. This guy is a rugby star. He's never played football. Like, this is a fun story for the summer, for the preseason. And the fact that that guy became a top 3, top 5 player on your roster, and he's just moving Myles Garrett off the line of scrimmage. Like, I know it's been a long time. He's been on this football team now for 7 years, but it's still incredible that he became one of, like, the core new pieces, the faces of your franchise, the voices in your locker room, the leaders that replaced, Jason Peters and Brandon Graham and, eventually Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox. The fact that one of those guys is this player, I'm still in awe of it. And Mailata today had a couple really big-time reps against Myles Garrett. I mean, it's unbelievable. And he's one of your 5 best players in the team. Pro Football Focus last year said he was the best player in football. Like, they ranked Jordan Mailata as the number 1 overall graded player in the entire NFL. It's incredible, and he had a great practice today. Again, you cannot, knock on wood, you cannot lose that guy to injury this year, or it dramatically changes your offense. One other thing for the first team offense, or just with Jalen Hurts in the passing game, Jalen throwing to running backs a lot more. That has been a reality. This summer, I think that makes sense considering the trajectory Jalen's been on as a pocket passer that's becoming more surgical. I think pre-snap, he's becoming more deliberate in his approach, taking care of the football, getting rid of the football fast, being more accurate, seeing the field and not forcing the issue too much. I think naturally what comes with that is throwing to the running back more, getting Saquon Barkley the football, but not just Saquon, but Will Shipley, who's a really good receiving running back. A.J. Dillon, again, he's going to be your power back in the backfield, but he's got some juice. He's got some wiggle for a guy that size, and I don't think I knew how natural his hands were, but he's been a big part of the receiving game this offseason. And Kevin Patullo made note of that a couple weeks ago in one of his press conferences. And it looks like, again, throwing to the running back, that's something I wanted more this year to help the screen game, to put more of an emphasis on the quick passing game and the run after the catch ability for these players. And it looks like Jalen Hurts is really trying to make that a thing for the offense this year. Normally, it's harder for running backs to catch the ball when you have a mobile quarterback. Naturally, these running backs, their numbers are going to look lower with Jalen Hurts as your quarterback. He's going to run a lot. But again, Jalen's evolving as a player inside the pocket, and I think that's going to be an element to this offense that's added more this year compared to 2024. And that was something even today. Like, A.J. Dillon got multiple targets in the red zone from Jalen, a couple completions, a couple, didn't go their way. But I think that's a big takeaway that I had as well. And one other thing for the defensive side of the football, the corners again today, I think one big takeaway, Keely Ringo started with the first team in 11-on-11s. Adoree Jackson started the day for the Eagles as a first-team cornerback in 7-on-7. So he started the day, but Ringo was the first guy up in 11s, which is, to me, more notable. So I think Keely's still in the lead to be the starting corner. Jacorian Bennett did get first-team reps today. He had a nice pass break up against Jerry Jeudy early on in practice, but then struggled mightily, it seemed like, against Jeudy, against these other Cleveland wide receivers. Got hit with a pass breakup that was actually called for a penalty. Looked a little stiff in coverage So Jacorian Bennett, not a great start. Again, if none of these guys go out there and win the job, I don't know. We'll see what the Eagles do. I think by default, though, it's going to be Keely Ringo. And then, again, like, he's had an up and down summer, but I think he's going to get the chance. He's going to get the first half of the year to earn this job. And if he doesn't win it, I don't know. Like, I think Jacorian Bennett and him are the favorites to start. I think Bennett will get an opportunity too. If one of these guys don't win it, it's Bennett or Ringo. If not, they're probably going to go out there and trade for a corner. We'll see what happens. But overall today, like, nobody, I think, pulled ahead in the race. I still think the favorites are Jacorian Bennett and Keely Ringo. We'll see what happens on that front. But overall, a solid practice for the Eagles. I think they won the day over Cleveland. We'll have another one tomorrow to recap right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Also, another side note, cool thing to see, Jahad Campbell and J-Oaks Hunt picking the brain of Myles Garrett. Learn their pass rush moves from the best of the best. Love seeing that. It was cool to see Shadur Sanders and Jalen Hurts talk for a long time after practice. Jalen being a mentor for a quarterback like this that's dealing with a lot of adversity. Jalen's gone through that more than any quarterback in football, so that was awesome to see as well. All right, guys, we'll recap this Locked On Eagles podcast coming up next with one final segment, getting into Malcolm Jenkins being named as the next candidate or the next inductee of the Eagles Hall of Fame. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. The NFL kickoff is right around the corner, and that means fantasy football season is back and in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. Me and my friends have our Yahoo Fantasy draft next weekend. Cannot wait to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness. Yahoo Fantasy, they're actually dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August, which is huge for me because our fantasy league, we have a lot of features, so we need Yahoo Fantasy to be flexible, and they definitely are. To kick it off, actually, they dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, which I love Guillotine. It's a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team each week, they actually get eliminated until there's only one team left standing. It's a really, if you're trying to switch up your fantasy, if you're a little bit bored of your head-to-head leagues, maybe you're into the classics, those are available on Yahoo, private and public. But if you want to switch it up, I highly recommend a Guillotine League. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, Eagles fans, we're wrapping up this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. An Eagles legend got inducted into the Eagles Hall of Fame today. Malcolm Jenkins, one of the biggest parts of that Super Bowl win, the first Super Bowl win in Eagles history. I wore the Super Bowl 52 hat today in honor of number 27. One of the most important parts of that championship run was with the Eagles from 2014 to 2019. To me, the first stabilizing force in the secondary that they had, especially at safety, since Brian Dawkins. You had like one star in between that. It was Asante Samuel for a couple years at corner. But Malcolm Jenkins, I value his time in Philadelphia so much because he was such a glue guy in the most difficult times. Like, he always, in adverse moments, was able to pull this team through the fire. Like, he elevated at a position at safety where it's very hard to elevate. He did it to the closest ability, to the closest level of Brian Dawkins, and nobody else has really been able to do that. Not even a guy that I love like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Malcolm Jenkins was that stabilizing force, finally, years after B-Doc at safety. He wore so many different hats. He played slot cornerback. He played deep safety. He played dime linebacker. This guy, in the Super Bowl, would go up against James White, the best receiving running back of an offense. He'd go up against the best tight end of an offense, like a Rob Gronkowski. He would take out the best receiver, Brandon Cooks, Super Bowl 52. If Malcolm Jenkins doesn't take him out of that game, Brandon Cooks was lighting the Eagles up in the first half. Like, if he doesn't take Cooks out, they might not win that football game. He was just so versatile and had so much on his plate that Jim Schwartz put on him. And even before that, with Chip Kelly, and then again in the Doug Peterson era, Jenkins was in a secondary that had a lot of holes. I mean, Rodney McLeod was a great counterpart to him in the backfield in the secondary, but Jalen Mills was not a great cornerback. Ronald Darby was a very up and down player. There were so many injuries to overcome on defense in 2017, in 2018 in the secondary. I mean, I'll always remember that Giants game where he saved the season with a pick in the first half when they were trailing. He picked off Eli Manning in the back of their own end zone. Without that, they don't make the playoffs. They don't save the season. They don't nearly get back to the NFC Championship. He told Jim Schwartz to simplify things because at the time, Devontae Bosby and Chandon Sullivan got thrusted into the defense, into the lineup. Like, Jenkins was just able to always rally this team when it felt like the odds were just insurmountable, stacked against them. Like, Jenkins rallied them vocally, but also on the field too, like with his versatility, with his leadership. He was just such a good player on and off the field. He was such a positive impact in the Philadelphia community. With all the protests in 2020, he was such a positive influence in rallying everybody at that time and helping to create positive change. I just have nothing but good things to say about Malcolm Jenkins. And he's one of my favorite players because I love versatility. He's the exact kind of football player I want in defense. I want a guy that you can use everywhere. I want a Swiss Army knife. It's why I'm so excited about Jahad Campbell. It's why I'm so excited about Cooper DeJean in year 2. Malcolm Jenkins was that player. If you wanted him to play dime linebacker, cool. You want him to go up against the best running backs and make tackles and get gritty in the mud, like he was that football player. You want him to cover the best tight ends and running backs, best slot receivers? Sure, he can do that. You want him to be a deep safety? I mean, Malcolm Jenkins was everything for this football team. In a time where they dealt with so much adversity, so many injuries, their secondary, they just couldn't get it right for so long. Like, again, is he a Brian Dawkins level player? Is he a Brian Dawkins figure in Eagles history? Not to that level, but to me, he's number 2 at safety in Eagles history. I think I would go as far to say, like, he might be number 2 in the Eagles secondary in franchise history from an impact perspective. It's him and maybe Eric Allen, who just got into the Hall of Fame. Like, that's how important he is to this franchise's history. Without him, you do not win your first ever championship. Like, when Carson Wentz goes down and, Jason Peters and Darren Sproles and all those injuries, you think without Malcolm Jenkins' leadership and his playmaking ability on defense, you think they're able to win that title? No way. You think they're able to overcome a 4-6 start in 2018 and end up winning a playoff game without Malcolm Jenkins? Again, they don't win that season-saving game against the Giants without him. They don't. In 2019, again, they have to win 4 straight games to win the division, and the offense is dealing with so many injuries at receiver. Malcolm Jenkins and the defense stepped it up and played lights out down the stretch. Malcolm Jenkins nearly gave them a chance to win that game against Seattle in the wild card round. Like, when they lost him in 2019 in that offseason after the season when Howie Roseman didn't pay him, I think it ended up being the right call because Jenkins only had a couple good years left where he went back to New Orleans. It was a business decision that probably had to happen, but you want to know Malcolm Jenkins' impact? Just look at what happened the following season in 2020 when you didn't have him, when you moved Jalen Mills to safety. Look at the drop-off on defense. Was that the only reason that all happened? No. But again, Malcolm Jenkins was an adversity hero, like an adversity warrior. And when you had all that adversity in 2020, who did you need most? It was Malcolm Jenkins, and you didn't have that football player. I don't think it's a coincidence they don't have him. And the following year, you won 4 games. So this to me was an obvious inductee into the Hall of Fame. I think Malcolm Jenkins is one of the most underrated players in franchise history. Again, I would go as far as saying not only is he top 2 all time in Eagles safeties, if I'm ranking them, like he's on the Mount Rushmore of safeties, I might put him ahead of Eric Allen at number 2 in the Eagles secondary all time. Like I think he's that important to this franchise, and it's cool to see him now as a photographer for, he was photographing practice today at the NovaCare. He was covering some preseason games for NFL Films. Love to see him doing things off the field too, in politics, in a good way, in change, I should say, in human rights, not in politics, writing books and being a photographer. Such an interesting person, an interesting player. He was versatile on the field, and he was versatile off the field. So, salute, tip of the cap to number 27, Malcolm Jenkins, a legend forever. in Eagles history. Oh, I love talking about that 2017 football team. There's a special place in my heart for all those guys, especially Malcolm. All right, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Until tomorrow, thanks so much as always for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.